Welcome back to the Dirk's Diaries podcast. I'm your host, Dirk, and I'm going to be trying to get some direction in the podcast. If you've listened or watched on YouTube, what I've done so far has been pretty sporadic and kind of just grasping for a direction. And really what that was is that I wanted to get the ball rolling. I wanted to get the podcast and the YouTube channel going because I was ready to do the videoing and the audio. So now what I'm going to do is try and give it some direction or some sort of platform or rhythm to follow for some more consistency. That is what I'm lacking. Maybe not so much in content. I like switching up my content, but maybe how I do things, how I present content. And so what I've got so far is I'm going to break down, give myself 2 to 3 subjects to talk about that I have come up with between each podcast. And if Dustin, my brother, who is kind of like my part-time co-host, he will also do the same, and then we can communicate back and forth, or I can communicate with you guys back and forth and give my thoughts on certain things that happen in my life as I go forward. So, like today, I will talk about how I'm going to be redoing this podcast or going to be doing this podcast moving forward. I want to talk about what it's like being a parent to kids when I never really wanted kids my whole life, even up to when I had them. And then I would also like to talk about chickens during COVID times. So those are 3 things I'm going to touch on. And I've already started with the podcast. So now with the podcast, it's gotten cooler here. The shop isn't really going to work out for doing the podcast as it's not insulated and the bugs are getting in. And so I'm not going to be shooting there until it warms up. And I'm going to try and figure something out for the shooting inside my home. Like right now, it's late, everyone's asleep, I'm in the living room on the couch. It's not ideal, but it's, we'll work with it for anyone in the video anyways. The audio should be the same. Okay, so that's the podcast. We've covered that. Let's dive into me not ever wanting to have kids, and here I am, father of 3. And how that kind of works out in my brain. My whole life, at a very young age, I decided I did not want kids, and I was adamant on it. I had been engaged before I got married to my wife years ago. I was engaged for a very long time in a relationship that was very deep. We bought a house together. We had been together for a very long time. We worked together. We started off as a very strong relationship, and I knew right from the get-go I did not want kids, and we were young when we started dating. We were young the whole time we were dating. I was 21-ish by the time it ended, but I think I was 17, 18 going into the relationship. I think mid-17. Let's shoot it around there. I can't even remember. It seems so long ago. And then, we bought a house when I was 19 together, and I think she was 21 when we bought the house. And one of the things that led to the end of this relationship was my sternness, my hold fast against not having kids. I did not want them. I didn't want them for many reasons. I didn't want to have to deal with changing the way that I was for kids and having them in my life. I didn't want to have to pay more in the expenses. I didn't want to have to give up my time. I didn't want to have to be responsible. I didn't want any of the I don't want to call them setbacks, any of the struggles that come with being a parent. People will say it's very selfish, and yes, it was very selfish. I only wanted to take care of me my whole life. I didn't want to have to be responsible for another living person, and I didn't want to have to teach any life lessons and go through any life struggles and have to meet anybody's expectations of being a dad or teaching any lessons. I just wanted my time for the rest of my life, and I wanted that from a very young age. I came from a family with lots of kids, and I had determined that that was not for me. I wasn't interested in it at all. Kids, I didn't want to have to deal with any sort of meltdowns, and every time I saw them, kids have a meltdown somewhere, I was like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I didn't want to be responsible. I didn't want to be a parent in any means where I had to talk to people, deal with schooling, provide clothes, food, shelter. I just wanted to take care of myself. I didn't want to have to deal with babies and not being able to I didn't want the freedoms that I had as a single adult to ever go away. And that went through my relationship that I was engaged with, and that was a big factor in why that ended. And then the relationships following was a big factor in why those ended. I had many conversations with many people with many different outlooks on kids, and I've always been in the mindset that not having kids was just for me, and I was okay with it. Those are the decisions you make. And you have to understand, people can say it's selfish, and that if you're going to be in a relationship, the expectation is to have kids. And I disagreed. I didn't want kids. I knew it was selfish, but I never was in the mindset that if you were in a relationship that you wanted to be married and have a life together. I never ever was under the impression that you had to have kids. In my mindset, that was something that you two figured out together, probably pretty early on. And I never kept it from anyone in my relationships. I think the expectation was that, so I would tell them, no, I don't want kids. We get in a relationship. And I always feel like the mindset was maybe that I would change as I got older, that I would want kids. But I'll tell you, I didn't want kids all the way up to the time where I thought Sam was pregnant. What changed with that? Why was there a change for me? I love being a dad. I love my kids. I wouldn't trade it for any mindset ever. I would not go back to who I was in that mindset. I would never give up my kids for anything. And all the reasons I didn't want kids still stand. Kids are a lot of work. They're a lot of sacrifice that I didn't want to have to put in. Now I want to. It's worth it. I see it. I'm a part of it. I'm willing to sacrifice, put the time in. Kids are teaching me a lot. Every day I'm learning new things about myself and learning about where I could grow. And so all the reasons I didn't want kids still stand true as real things, but now I don't have the desire to not want them. I don't have those feelings. I don't think about it. I actually had to put thought into it at work before I came and did this podcast on what my mindset was around not having kids then versus now, and I don't imagine not having kids now. And from the moment that I found out I was pregnant, I was ecstatic to have the children that I have now. Now here is the key I find, and I've talked about this over the years. My oldest daughter is 4. So I've talked about this to people on how things have changed. Why am I okay with it now when I wasn't before? Why did I waste past relationships, including an engagement of marriage, over not having kids, and then now I have them? And what's different? The truth is, the person I have kids with is different. If I look back and I look at myself and I look at my situations, and the relationships I was in, and the things I was doing in my life, and all those together came down to not wanting to have kids. In my relationships that I had, those were not people I would have kids with. There were things going on within the relationships. I don't want to say struggles or dysfunctions. The relationship itself was really great. Is great enough for me to propose and be like, yes, this is a person I can spend the rest of my life with. But then as time went on and things started to change, or we started to grow, it's tough. So we were both growing into who we wanted to be as adults versus like career-wise. We jumped the gun, I think, when we bought our house. It put a lot of pressure on, and it took away a lot of those freedoms that I was also afraid to lose with having kids. Having that mortgage at a young age took away a lot of freedoms for me. And then it was just about working. I was working 3 jobs, 2 during the weekdays, 1 on the weekends, and I was not happy, and I could never imagine throwing kids in the mix. So it started off as me being young and not wanting to have kids because I grew up with lots of siblings. And then going into young adulthood, I guess, into my 20s, it was that I had taken on so much and lost so many freedoms already. I did not want to give them up anymore to having kids. And also the person I would be having kids, I was engaged at the time, I found that she, as we were getting older, she wanted more and more control, and she wanted me to sacrifice more and more of my freedoms for a lifestyle, and I didn't want to do that. I did not want to give up a lifestyle. Or freedoms to live a certain lifestyle, to have a certain image, or to have people think of me in a certain way, like the cookie cutter fit into society type way. Like, yes, we have a mortgage and we work good steady jobs for long periods of time, and I wanted freedom, and I gave it up at a young age, and I probably shouldn't have done that, but that's what happened. And moving from that relationship, as it fell apart, it kind of set in stone more to me, like, I don't want to give up control, and I don't want to give up freedoms. And that stuck with a couple other relationships that I went through. And I held fast to the not having kids, not giving up freedoms, not really wanting to sacrifice any of my ways to make way for kids and a future like that. Selfish, yes, but I mean, that's the reality, and the truth is that everybody makes decisions for the way they wish to live in a selfish way. You do not become the way you are for other people, I hope. You should be living your life for you and not letting other people make decisions for you. That's how I hope everybody's living. Be your own person. It may come off selfish, and it might as well be, or it might just as well be selfish, but I think it's maybe not so much as selfish as self-care. I mean, is self-care selfish? I don't think so. I'm not sure what everybody else's opinions are, but maybe that's a little bit of it. So here's where things change. So I get in the relationship with my wife, and we're only together for 3 months before we find out that she's pregnant. None of these feelings and anxieties about having kids are there. I did not think about giving up or sacrificing any freedoms. I only saw a future. So here's a difference. In these past relationships, I saw burden, I saw chains, I saw my people controlling me, almost puppet masterish, or some sort of me giving up my freedoms to live a lifestyle. And then now here I did not have anxieties about giving up a lifestyle or giving up freedoms or having to work 3 jobs to support this way of life. My wife and our relationship works out in a way that none of that was a concern, and none of it has been. I do give up certain things. Mostly it's time. That's really what it comes down to, is that you got to put time in it. It's not even giving it up now. In my mind, it's changed to just a different type of quality. I wanted just me time, alone time before. Even when I was in relationships, I just wanted to have my own time and not have, have the relationship separate of my own life, if that makes sense. Every episode I get an itchy ear. Yeah, so I didn't want to give up anything. I would have my relationship with this person, and then I wanted to have my life outside of that relationship, with the person that I was in the relationship with. Living a life together, it's so complicated. I'm trying to explain it. Living our life together, but not relinquishing any power of myself to that person. And I don't feel that way in this relationship. And I don't feel like having kids, I have to relinquish my powers or time, or that I'm making any sort of sacrifice. They'll say that parenting is all about sacrifice. I think that parenting is just a different quality of time. I wanted my own quality of time before kids. Now I want quality of time with my kids. I love them. They're great. I couldn't imagine, and here's something that really sets me apart from with my wife than from other kids, is that I could not imagine having children with anybody else. My kids are such a mixture of my wife and me that I enjoy all aspects of them. In my past relationships, there was clearly, at the time I didn't see it, but there was clearly things going on between the two peoples, me and the other person, that I could not handle with seeing those two traits together in one person. So if we had a kid and it had traits of the girl I was with, and it had traits of me, those are two traits in my mind, I believe, if I'm self-analyzing, that I would not be able to live with. Maybe that's just nature doing its thing, helping you pick the right mate. I don't know. But with my wife, any traits that those kids have with any of my traits, I like the combinations that come out of there. And then, with kids, they have a little bit of mom, they have a little bit of dad, and then they create something of their own within themselves, but it still fits into something that you love. These other girls that I had in my past that I was in these relationships with, like at the time, I really loved them. But now I cannot fathom that. I don't see that relationship. I don't understand how I was in that place. I've changed so much. And my life with kids and my wife, it feels next level compared to anything I've had in the past. It seems so complicated. I'm not really sure exactly how I can put that into words. Hopefully it gives everybody a little bit of an understanding of my mindset between then and now. It is a sacrifice of time, like literally, but it doesn't feel like it. It's quality time. I spend time with my kids, and my kids teach me a lot. Like, it's not all tickety-boo. What I've learned with my kids is that I can throw a temper tantrum like a little kid. I need to learn to step back and not be so reactive, which I thought was who I was until I had kids and they brought out, I can be a little reactive. I can throw some sissy fits, and I'm supposed to be the adult, so I've got a lot of growing up to do, and having these kids is really making me do it. That's a conversation for another podcast on how I could be a better dad, because there's lots of things I need to I don't want to say change, I want to say grow. There's a lot of behaviors I need to grow out of. I need to grow up a little bit as I go forward on being a parent. I got 3 little ones and I've got a lot to learn, and it's gonna be a good ride. It's already been good. The memories and things, when you have kids with the right person, everything about them is good, even the bad. Like, you have a bad night, you go, I don't know what that was about, and you start off kind of talking, what was this? Maybe I should have done that. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle these situations. But those conversations will always, for us, move into, do you remember when Freya was this age? Or do you remember when Elias did this? Or Maverick is the cutest baby. That's when, the struggle conversations always turn into something light and positive and great memories. So I know I've got lots to learn and to grow from as a parent, as a dad, and I have some game plans in place and things I'd like to try and some skills I'd like to install into my kids that I wish that I maybe had growing up. So all that's for another podcast, because I want to get on to my thoughts about chickens during the pandemic. This is my topic right now. So let me dive into a story here. On our street here, I live down kind of in the country area, lots of farms around here, off the beaten path. And someone had dumped some chickens in the forest. Apparently in the forest. Man, I'm struggling. Apparently they'd been there for a few days. We were driving by, and I hadn't seen them before. We were driving into town. We see them on the road and in the woods. We slow down. We were checking them out. I'm like, there's chickens running around in there. There is a chicken farm further back, but it's not something they would do. They're a professional, clean business, and we've never had chickens just running around like that before. So I'm like, okay, well, we'll check on them on our way back, see if they're still here or what. Maybe they got out and they're gonna go home. We write online. We have a community watch Facebook page for this area. We ask if anybody knows who they belong to. Maybe they got out, and they say on there that they've been there for at least 5 days. So we're on our way back, and they're there all running around in and out of traffic as it goes by on the road. They're sporadic, and they're looking pretty stressed. So we quickly run home. We get a bucket of feed. Me and Sam, my wife, and we jump out into the woods, run around, and the ferns here are huge, and the ground is deep underneath them, and there's logs buried underneath. And so we're running through these ferns, jumping, trying to grab these chickens. There's 5 of them out there. They're all boys. We built them a pen. We got them set up. So we've got 5 random roosters that people just dropped off on the road. There's lots of thoughts on this. Roosters, you can eat them, but they're not going to lay you any eggs. And they're a lot of work, and they make a lot of noise, and you get a lot of complaints, and you can't always have them everywhere. So it seems to me like this person found themselves in a predicament with 5 boy chickens, 5 roosters, and they didn't know what to do. So their thought was to leave them in the forest on the side of the road in the countryside. By the time I got them, they were so dehydrated. I don't know if you know this, but they got the red little danglies and the red things on their heads, and they shrink as they get dehydrated and hungry and sick or whatever. And some of these chickens that was shrunk right up, shriveled right up, and when we caught them, they felt so tiny and just weak. By the time we got them all back to our place, like, it didn't take long. They all just passed out from exhaustion. I gave them some food. They were really emaciated, and they weren't going to last much longer. They were going to starve to death or dehydrate to death out there. There was not water around. It was not ideal for them. They weren't really leaving the area that they were dumped out at. In the trees behind a stump, you could find where they were kind of nesting each night. They hadn't traveled very far. The road was right there. Their time was limited if I didn't snatch them up and bring them home, and I don't know what I'm doing with them either. I'm not sure if I can have them here or if the neighbors will like them. It is country area, but right where we are, we have some close homes, so only time will tell. 5 roosters, I've never had roosters. It'll be interesting and a bit of a learning curve. We'll just see what happens with them, but we're gonna do right by them the best that we can. We're not gonna abandon them. This is what I believe happened with the pandemic and people being scared about food and etc. Everyone jumped on board with chickens. I literally saw the price of chickens go from around $3, $4, maybe $5-10 for ready to lay hens, to $50 for ready to lay hens. So quite a price increase. But as eggs, when they're unsexed and not ready to lay, and they're harder to take care of when they're hatchlings, they still go for like $3. You can buy a whole bunch of those, and a low investment risk, because young chickens die pretty easy. They just get a cold breeze and they'll just die. So I think what's happening here is that people who are in a rush to get chickens and are trying to establish some sort of continuous food and eggs during the pandemic when it first started, and prices of chickens are going up. Maybe they want to sell them, whatever. But they bought them, I think, when they didn't know what sex they were. Find out that they're roosters. They don't have the experience, the knowledge, or the capability, nor do they clearly want to put the effort into trying to rehome them or shelter them or find someone who can hold on to them till they become meat birds, whatever. They did not want to put the time and effort in. They didn't want to be responsible. They dumped them. I believe that we are going to see in the next year to 2 years people dropping chickens off all over, getting rid of them for free. There was such a chicken movement, a movement to buy chickens when the start of COVID happened. We couldn't even get them. We couldn't find new ones. It was a struggle. The price had grown so much for them. Even still, there's a demand for chickens. If you want point of lay, you're going to pay. So I think what's going to happen is, as things open up and people get more comfortable, and they get tired of having to deal with cleaning a coop, and this isn't everyone, but there's going to be a majority, a certain amount of people that are just going to get tired of taking care of them. And they're going to try and sell them for maybe what they got them for. People aren't going to be as interested in spending that much. Maybe they'll drop their prices. But I honestly believe that we're going to see around here anyways, people dumping chickens, dropping off chickens, and especially roosters. Maybe they don't know what to do. I think we're going to see this quite a bit. And I've seen online people say that they're dumping roosters in other areas. So here's the thing. Know what you're getting into. If you know there's a chance you're going to get roosters, think about it. Come up with a plan. People here are not being accountable. This person got these animals. They're responsible for their life. Even if they're going to eventually eat them, you are responsible for taking care, making sure they're healthy, making sure their needs are met until that harvest. All right? When you abandon them to starve, you are the one who is failing. You have dropped so low. You have literally thought that the life of this animal isn't worth it. You can drop it off. Or maybe you think that they'll live, because there are people that literally think that if you take a chicken out in the wild, that they are home. That they are home and safe in the wild. Those chickens will die. They will die. Nothing dies nice and easy in the wilderness. Nothing dies of old age. Nothing lives a life of comfort. It is a hard, brutal life in the wild. And chickens, especially ones that have been kept in a pen and all that, they're not adaptable to that environment very well, especially around here where there's a high predator situation for chickens like that. And I'm not against the predator prey system. I'm against you taking on an animal, saying you're going to be responsible, and then abandoning those responsibilities in the nature, and then using the excuse that they're in nature where they belong. What really should happen is that if you take responsibility for an animal, be responsible for it. I don't think we're going to see this with this chickens either. It's my wife, we talked about this when COVID was a little more than 1/3 of the way in, that the amount of people just buying up dogs, people who are laid off work, getting the CERB, don't have to pay their rent, bills are the cheapest, and responsibility is its lowest, and the time is in abundance. Yeah, everyone's buying up puppies. Mark my words, and by next summer after, there's going to be a real dog problem, either in the pounds, SPCA, or just leaving them in the woods. Where I lived as a kid, people would just leave dogs on the mountains and leave them to the wild. People believe that dogs will just adapt into wolf packs. Maybe not. I think most likely that they will succumb to the elements, or loneliness, or starve, or dehydrate, or become prey. They're not going to live a great, happy, dreamful life. But just heed my warnings about having animals being dumped. It's going to happen. COVID animal. There's going to be a COVID animal crisis. These roosters are just the start for us. I think that there's going to be plenty of abandoned animals when people have no choice but to back pay their rent and go to work and be responsible, and maybe they can't handle it anymore, or whatever their circumstances are. I've seen people dump animals in the past. Dogs, puppies, cats. In this time period when everyone has all the time and means and lack of responsibilities, they take on a dog. Now all of a sudden responsibilities start coming back. Gotta start catching up on them bills. Work's overloaded. Maybe bills are so high. It's expensive to live here. Things start catching up. All of a sudden the dog needs attention it's not getting. It's getting frustrated. It's chewing shoes. It's acting out because it's not getting the attention it needs. You can't handle the stress. The food is expensive. You're not taking him for walks. You gotta clean up after him. The relationship between you and the dog is no longer working because you don't have the time to put into it. And then those dogs, you either see them at the SPCA, or people will just dump them. And that's a thing that they do. So those are kind of the things I wanted to touch on. Those are my thoughts and feelings. Let me know in comments or anything like that. I'm going to try and get better at this and give myself topics to talk about. So today we covered the changes I'm going to try and do in the podcast like that, and podcasting inside because it's warm in here. Today I talked about what my mindset around never ever wanting kids to now being the dad to 3 of my own beautiful children. That was complicated. I was kind of struggling to get that information out. And then I covered the future thoughts on abandoned animals and dumping animals in the wake of COVID. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all three subjects. and it's getting pretty late, probably around 1 a.m. because I wait for the kids and stuff to be in bed. And let's keep this ball rolling. I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thanks.